Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Alrighty, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is a very special guest, Mistare Fusion from the Mistare Fusion channel. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, we got this guy on to talk about some Dragon Ball character. What are the chances of that?
Fairly high, it seems, sometimes. I do talk about Dragon Ball on occasion, very rarely. I'll do it.
Yeah, what, like 20,000 subscribers because of it or some crap like that? Some ridiculous number. Oh, man. Yeah, so I it's funny, Lance and I have got like kind of a similar communities that we've hung around and just never had the chance to do a video together, and I've kind of always wanted to have you on, so it's just, like I was saying before we started recording, it's just great to finally have the opportunity to have you on here. And, today we're doing a Geeky Gentleman character discussion, and what character are we discussing today?
Well, it appears we're not only discussing Broly, but the brand new and allegedly improved Broly from the new movie Dragon Ball Super Broly.
Well, actually, no, we're just talking general Broly. So the original, the new one, the whole range.
Oh, really?
Is the fun part. Yeah. Yeah, we're talking the whole range of every interpretation of the character.
No one told me this. I didn't do my research here. I'm confused.
It's fine. I'm sure the like intense plot details of his previous 3 films are like clearly locked in your head. So yeah, we start off with a lot of shade there, but you gotta give the guy some props. Broly, for being a movie character, is one of the most popular Dragon Ball things out there. I dare say. He's not on like Frieza or Cell level, maybe not even on Buu level, but I feel like Broly is pretty damn popular and tied in with the imagery of Dragon Ball.
Well, do you know what his original writer said about him?
No. It's
Koyama Takao, who was the script writer and essentially the head writer for Dragon Ball Z and wrote all the movies for that series. He said he was always trying to come up with a better villain after each successive movie, a stronger one, a better one. And then he said, and then I got to Broly, and I couldn't think of anybody who could top Broly, so I kept bringing him back for three movies because I couldn't think of anything else.
I mean, like, Broly is this really, really interesting little part of Dragon Ball where there's so much going on there that I have a really hard time believing the writers had any idea what they were doing with. But there's just so many things that subconsciously, particularly in the first movie, that subconsciously they're hitting on that work in the character's favor, but all of the actual text as opposed to the subtext works against the character's favor. And it creates this really weird juxtaposition where you want to love him based on, the cool factor, but then you have to deal with the baggage. And so, I'm not shy to say that I think Dragon Ball Z Abridged is probably one of the better dubs of Dragon Ball out there. And I think they've pretty much got the definitive take on Broly. He's so dumb, but he's so cool, but he's so dumb. That kind of tends to be where I land on the general gist of the character until we get to the new movie.
Well, it's as I've said in some of my videos, and it's so the timing of this is so weird because I just finished covering movie 7, the movie before Broly, last month on my Dragon Ball dissection series. So honestly, it's been a while since I've watched movie 8, which is the first Broly movie. God, so I just feel kind of out of this, but I do remember the first time that I saw it, or once I bought it, I looked at the back of the box and saw the running time, because once you get to the middle Dragon Ball Z movies, they tend to become kind of formulaic, or very formulaic, and so for me the fighting kind of starts to run together in all these movies, and the only thing that I find of interest is like the little side bits, the humorous parts in it. But then this movie was much longer than a lot of the previous movies. So I'm like, okay, this might actually be a real movie with a lot more meat, a lot more story to it, and to a certain extent it does. It has quite a bit more history for Broly than a lot of the other villains do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and it's just the title of the first movie, or at least the Americanized title. I'm not sure if the Japanese title is any different, but
it's very different.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go with what I know, which is the Americanized title, which is Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan. There's so much going for Broly in that film that just has what I feel are a lot of layers of subtext that the film itself does not even kind of deserve. And so I think that the best way I can describe it is a lot of the fans of Dragon Ball I've tended to notice kind of want other characters besides Goku to have a damn win. And as a Vegeta fan, I'm kind of that way with Vegeta, and so you watch like movie 8 as a Vegeta fan, and it's like, really, and if anyone else were writing this, it'd probably be Vegeta's movie. Like, so much about it, it's all about the Saiyans, it's about, this legendary Super Saiyan, it's about founding a new Vegeta, all this stuff. There's so much going on there that really provides the opportunity for a pretty good character arc for Vegeta. And then the movie just doesn't do it. And so, like, you look at the title, Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan, and kind of the character that should be there is this character of everything that Vegeta wished he could be, and that he's just not. Everything that he kind of idolized, the myth of the legendary warrior and this unstoppable power. And then, the idea of confronting him with that and seeing that it's terrifying, uncontrollable, and completely awful, really, could have been really interesting. Instead, he just kind of sits there and, complains for like good half the movie. And it's just, disappointing, like most things when you're a Vegeta fan, you just end up disappointed. But yeah, so that's kind of the thing that I always saw in Broly, is the potential for some really interesting stuff in at least the first movie that never really got picked up on. And even the really silly obsession with Kakarot, that's very literally childish, kind of could serve as an interesting foil for Vegeta's obsession with Kakarot, but it's just not enough there to be actually done with it,
I don't know. I think you're underselling Vegeta's role from what I remember. I mean, I can see if you wanted him to get the win here, that would be disappointing. But I don't know. I mean, he doesn't just sit there and complain. He has a complete, sort of internal crisis. He completely breaks down. He cannot handle this idea, which honestly, is fairly consistent with the way his character is portrayed when he is, he has basically two modes a lot of the time, especially around this area of the series, which is he's either, extremely arrogant when he's on top, but then when somebody threatens him, he does tend to break down. He had the wonderful moments in the Frieza arc, where he's sneaking around and doing subterfuge, but but once he gets to Frieza, and Frieza just completely shows him up, he breaks down and he cries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I think it's there. I think there's a bit of it there. I just don't feel like it's delivered on to the extent that it really should be. And ultimately, it's kind of because of the formulaic nature of those movies, where, you know, you kind of need to eventually just have Goku do a spirit bomb or something. And I mean, yeah, in this movie, he doesn't actually do the spirit bomb. He just collects everyone's energy and uses it for one big attack, which is nothing like the spirit bomb. And so, like, the formulaic nature kind of breaks a little bit, and you don't even necessarily need to give Vegeta the win so much as, like, some kind of proper realization, which I don't feel the movie properly does. He kind of just breaks down and then ends up just giving his energy up, and it's like, even that's like a huge battle for him, and that should really be the moment where he does it willingly and doesn't need to be convinced, in my opinion. So, like, it's interesting. This is definitely a video about Broly, but I feel when we're talking original movie Broly, a lot of his character that is there is, if you're being generous, wrapped up in Vegeta. And what Broly means to Vegeta, as opposed to what he really means on his own. Because I think most people will, like, even Broly fans, I think, will admit that the obsession with Goku is really dumb. At least the conceit to where it comes from is just really stupid.
Are you talking about the crying?
Yeah.
I've heard some critics worded as it being it shouldn't be taken exactly literally. It's more of a, and I mean, again, it's been a while since I've seen the movie, so I'm not weighing in on this personally, but I did find it interesting to read this type of take on it. That it's not literally the crying that does it, but the crying or that sort of juxtaposition of them as babies in the crib is more of a thematic tying together of these characters, that Goku was always the type of person, or had that type of character, who would be sort of of an antithesis to Broly, and no matter what situation they found themselves in, that they would have that kind of rough relationship where Goku could always just kind of get under his skin. That might be reading a bit too much into it, but
yeah, I see what you're getting at, and I see the argument there, but that does feel just a little too generous. It's the conceit provided. Like, you know, it's one of those things where if they were older, maybe, and like it was some kind of deep-seated childhood thing, then maybe. But I don't know, the making it so ultimately trivial, a baby cried, always seemed really, really just like a league too far to me.
I'd say the problem is, or at least what I find the main problem of this movie is that there is story there and there is meat to it, but it's not, the way it's delivered is not structured terribly well, which is actually going to be sort of a recurring motif, I think, with a lot of these movies that we're discussing today. But you know, it's basically everything we know about Broly is backstory, because as a character in the present, there's not much going on there. So everything is his backstory. What happened to him as a baby? What happened to Paragus? What happened to the planet? What happened to, you know, them growing up? It's all backstory, and it's all told in a very sort of pedestrian way. It's just Paragus is in his lab, and it's, I'm going to think back now and tell myself about all this stuff that I already know, and then it's just crammed into this one section of the film. All the backstory is just dumped onto the screen right there, and then that's pretty much it. It's not really woven into the narrative of the film. It's just, oh right, there's a backstory here. We got to get that out. So here it is, Paragus telling himself stuff he already knows.
I mean, I do that every day. You know, shoveling the driveway, just thinking, man, I really got to do with this. You know, this is part of my whole backstory. Yeah, no, and that tends to be the problem, especially as you go into like movie 2 and 3 of Broly, where it's just like he becomes more and more the marketable thing, and less of the character is there. and it didn't have a ton of character to begin with, right?
That's definitely
Because yeah, like the stuff is, the thing I will always say is someone who, as someone who likes Broly, and I gotta wrap this around and talk about a toy I had. As someone who likes Broly, I'll fully admit that there's not much there. There's just a lot of potential and a lot of threads that you can read into if you're really trying, but ultimately I feel you have to be generous with it. But by the time you get to like movie 2, and it really isn't. By the time you get to movie 3, it's completely a foregone conclusion. He's just a raving dog at that point. But movie 2 had at least the potential to go somewhere with it, and it just didn't. He's seriously, he's even dumber in movie 2 than movie 3 in a weird way, because he's not completely lost his mind in that one. He's just really determined to kill 2 children. In like a shocking level, he's really determined to kill 2 children. He could go off at any point and blow up the whole planet, but he's just so determined to kill these 2 children.
Oh yeah, in his second appearance, which is movie 10, they pretty much just have the switch flipped entirely to Mad Dog, Broly smash type of mood. But I am going to say, and this is one of my more unpopular opinions, I'm sure, is that I Broly in those first 3 movies that he's in is kind of a neutral element to me. He's not somebody that I ever really had any strong feelings towards. And like I said before, especially once you get farther and farther into these movies, the villain sort of becomes, to me, the least interesting part of it. And because of that, I actually much prefer the second and third Broly movies to the first one, just because all the other stuff is stuff I find really enjoyable.
Okay, I think that's fair. I mean, the Trunks and Goten antics, have their place. Some people like them more than others.
I love putting Goten and Trunks with Vito in this movie. I thought they had a really great chemistry, and the whole, I don't know, that whole silly thing with the town and the
fortune teller or whatever, he's supposed to be, shaman or whatever.
Yeah, that shady shaman who's
oh, that's a great name.
the Om Bachama guy, as Trunks calls him. Because that was his chant. But yeah, I loved all that stuff. So I mean, just Broly is just kind of there as a brick wall for them to smash into.
He's almost like a Jason Voorhees type. Not even like early Jason Voorhees. He's like Jason X level Jason Voorhees type in that movie, where it's just ridiculous. And there's no character to talk about when it comes to Broly himself. The other stuff outside of that, people have varying opinions on. I didn't particularly care for it one way or another. Kid Trunks has always been kind of there for me. He peaked way too early with that going Super Saiyan in the gravity room. And then, you get to Bio Broly, and it's not even technically the same Broly. He's a clone.
Yeah, it's not Broly at all technically in this movie. It's Swamp Thing, but whatever.
Yeah, and so like there's really not much to talk about there. Besides, before we leave the original trilogy, I can call it that. Before we leave the original trilogy, the Broly films, the one thing about him that I think is just undeniably awesome, and maybe a real reason why he's stuck around so long, was he has one of the coolest charging up ki blasts in the entire series, canon and all, with like the effect they give him for that like kind of negative of the animation when he's like the negative ring of the animation as he charges up a blast is just really, really cool looking. I really like the sense of dread that creates on screen, and I don't know, it's just cool as shit.
I don't even remember it. Is that from the first one, or?
It's in all 3.
Really?
When he charges up an attack, he'll have his hand open and he kind of closes a fist as he gathers energy into it, and like a ring will come onto the screen from out of frame, close in on his hand, and as it does it, it's really quick. The colors will basically swap to almost a negative of the image. So you get like these flashes of negative, and it's a really, really cool look. It's kind of hard to describe without just seeing it happen. But like, yeah, you'll have, whites will go kind of purplish or greenish or whatever, just in the frame. It's pretty neat. So I really like that look, and that's kind of all there in the first three, the original trilogy. But then there's the reason that Broly is, newly popular, and that is the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie. So, I've been really thinking on this one, and Lance, I know you and I have very different opinions on Dragon Ball, including Super, wildly different by the time we get to Super. But for me, I kind of walked out of that theater, and I've been thinking to myself the whole time, I'm like, I'm not sure if this movie is better than Battle of Gods or not, but it's close, and that means a lot to me because Battle of Gods is probably one of the best Dragon Ball things, in my opinion.
We can definitely agree on that. I did really enjoy Battle of Gods.
Okay, and so yeah, Broly is really right up there for me. I like a lot of what they do with Broly in that movie. It's obviously debatable to what extent he even is a character. I think he's more a character in Super Broly than he is anywhere else in the series.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
You don't have to read into it as much. You don't have to be as generous. It is much more there on the screen. And so I tend to really, really like the approach they go with, because it's really racked my brain. I'm like, it's a sympathetic villain. And I don't think Dragon Ball has done that before. I was really trying to rack my brain if like anyone even kind of counts as not like sympathetic later on, or we kind of like see their backstory more and get to see why they became this way, but sympathetic from the start. Because like you could argue Vegeta's a sympathetic villain, but only in retrospect after you get all the stuff in the Frieza arc. Broly in Super is sympathetic from the start.
Well, I came into this movie with quite a bit of wariness. Like you said, I guess you and I do have different opinions on Super, because by the time it was over, I was very displeased with it. I found the Tournament of Power to be extraordinarily boring. I hated Resurrection F. I thought that movie was terrible, and I was bored to death in that theater. And I was really just becoming sort of jaded towards the franchise in general. And then they announced the next movie was going to be about Broly, and I almost threw up my hands and go, okay, this is it. Because it just seemed like such a pandering to fan service kind of move. It's like, oh yeah, they're bringing back another character that they have used before. They brought back Frieza so many other times. Now they're bringing back Broly, and then it's like, oh, Gogeta's going to be in it too. I'm like, oh my god, come on, can you just have a new idea? So, but I was going to give it its fair shot, obviously, but it did not. All the pre-release stuff, and I tried to avoid any kind of spoilers, but the pre-release stuff that I heard made me exceptionally wary. But I enjoyed this movie. I definitely have a laundry list of problems with it, but compared to the Tournament of Power, compared to Resurrection F, this is leagues above either of those.
Mm. And what do you think about like the portrayal of Broly in here? Do you think he kind of comes off as more of a sympathetic villain in this?
Compared to the previous movies, yes. And even just taken on its own, the first half of the movie does a very good job of setting him up as a sympathetic villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was just something that really impressed me, because it creates a different kind of tension than I feel we're used to in Dragon Ball fights. Like, most of the time Goku, like, at worst kind of bumbles his way into something that ends up being really important that he, like, has to do. But this kind of created a thing where, like, yeah, this fight definitely needs to happen because events have been orchestrated outside of our hero's control to allow it to happen, and we certainly don't want the heroes to lose because then Frieza might destroy the Earth, and that could be bad, I guess. But at the same time, you know, you have this sympathy for Broly, and that creates such a weird feeling in a Dragon Ball fight that I don't think we're really used to. Most of the time when we get a villain, they're pretty much committed to evil up until Goku decides to spare their life for whatever reason. It at least once you get to Z era stuff, it's a bit rare in this day and age, it seems. So it just felt like really, really unique and created a different sense of tension that I'm not used to in Dragon Ball, especially in Dragon Ball movie.
Yeah, you know, actually, now that you say it, I'm not even sure if it's really fair to call him a sympathetic villain, because there's really nothing villainous about him. I'd call him a sympathetic antagonist. But yeah, he's actually, there's really nothing bad about him, which is not a complaint. That's actually a really, really good thing, I think. But he has no evil scheme. He has no desire to destroy or control anybody. He's kind of a pawn, even more so than he was in his original movie.
Oh yeah, like I love all the stuff with the Frieza minions that are like, oh, this poor kid, he's only been used by everyone around him. And like, seriously, from the moment he's born, he's like, oh, the Saiyan elite are like, oh, we're gonna take him and put him in a pod and groom him to be a great warrior. And then King Vegeta's like, no, fuck that noise. He can't be better than my son. I'm sending him away. And then Paragus like, I'm gonna raise you to be my tool for revenge. And Frieza just kind of picks him up and goes right off with that plan too. It is exceptionally manipulative. You're right. Villain might not be the right term. Sympathetic threat or something might work better. But I think the thing that's really interesting about him is what they kept from the movies, the previous movies, which is that sense of completely uncontrollable, untapped power. Because they've always hinted that the Super Saiyan transformation is overwhelming and kind of makes you a bit more menacing. And this kind of, like, Broly kind of always took that to the absolute extreme, and this movie kind of shows the scary side of it. Because we do have a lot of sympathy for Broly, the poor kid who is exiled and left for dead, and then at the same time he's sitting there and it's like you kind of see why that might not have been the worst decision in the world.
Oh yeah, I love that aspect of it. Yeah, especially how it relates to Paragus's character, because he starts to see it himself, and it's obviously something that he knows, and he's being chastised for it in a lot of the movie for having the collar on him, for stopping him. But it's hard to argue with what he's doing, considering that, yeah, I mean, Broly would have killed that guy in the bar. He is posing a danger to the Earth. There is an argument to be made that he needs to be controlled, just for for the good of everybody else.
Yeah, and like it's just so sad, and like you do really just feel for the guy sitting there fighting Goku and Vegeta, and of course they go with the whole he learns to fight as he fights. He's got no real training. He's just kind of taught himself how to use some of his power, and then in the middle of combat he's adapting and learning real quick, which is just, I don't know, it's really cool. It's really fun to see that. I will say this much though, and I of course don't want to get too wrapped up in the debate. Super Saiyan God was such a cool idea when they first introduced it, and then just successively they have made it so much less important because everyone keeps adapting to it way too fast, including Broly, unfortunately. The power scale of that went down really quick. But yeah, I mean, even with that, the moment it happens in the story, it does feel legitimately like, wow, this guy is just an unbelievable threat in a way that he doesn't even realize, which is really really neat thing that they managed with that.
I would say my difficulties with this, because as I said before, they did a lot of good groundwork with this, and I loved I loved the new characters they put in there. I loved the dynamic between Broly and Sheila and Lemo, and I recall because as I said, like most of the classic era movies often feel like there's just enough dialogue in there to justify the next 20-30 minutes of fighting. But I distinctly remember sitting in the theater watching that scene between the three of them where Broly explains the pelt that he wears, and thinking to myself, oh my god, this actually feels like a real movie for once. People are talking, there's development, there's actual stuff, relationships being formed here. But my problem is that the movie really feels like two halves that are sewn together, which a lot of the other movies have too, where it's once the fighting starts, everything else comes to a grinding halt. And I thought it was a really big mistake to have, as much as I love the idea in general of Broly being this unstoppable force, and that definitely needed to be in there, it shouldn't have been there for the entire fight, because Broly stops as a character at that moment. He has no agency anymore, and there's this huge debate, this pull between Sheila and Paragus is, oh, he's this innocent boy who needs a chance. And it's like, no, he's a dangerous fighter and needs to be brought up this way. And we never really find out what Broly feels about that. People are making all these assumptions about him, but I don't really get to follow up on that. And even by the end of the movie, he's just taken back to where he began with no input or control over him. He doesn't have any agency in this movie, unfortunately. And so they have a good setup for him, but then he never really gets to do anything with that character-wise. He's just sort of at the mercy of everybody else, and I don't really know what he wants ultimately and who's right about him.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonably fair assessment, and that's kind of the reason I'm really glad they didn't kill him, and they in fact re-isolated him, but in a much less evil way, because that gives us the opportunity to kind of explore the character more, develop him more. Dragon Ball's always got a shaky track record. How well that will be done in the future is up for debate, but I think it was. I think I would agree with you more if they had killed him. The fact that they left the door open by leaving him alive, giving him the chance to grow and train with someone who maybe will be able to show him how to not lose control of his power. I think that does leave the door open for Broly to develop more as a person on his own and kind of decide what kind of guy he wants to be. Oddly enough, like the implication is that Goku wants to push himself by training against Broly and try to tap into power on Broly's level. It won't happen, but I would find it just infinitely fascinating if Broly kind of struck up something with Gohan, since Gohan's got that kind of pacifist attitude toward him.
Yeah.
And it could be really interesting to see a Broly that actively doesn't use his power, because those two characters could end up having a lot in common if he went down that kind of road.
I'm glad you brought Gohan up, because I remember thinking immediately that because there are definitely some classic era Dragon Ball Z movies that I do like, and I remember thinking in this movie what this movie really needed was a scene kind of like in the third Dragon Ball Z movie where the villain in that one, Tullus, has gotten Gohan to transform into his great ape form, and they until he's thrashing around, being violent, crushing Goku, until suddenly his little, higher dragon, his little pet, comes and sort of taps into that humanity, which is also something that was done with the fight against Vegeta as well, where they're able to, unlike any other great ape, his friends are able to get Gohan to, at least for a moment or to an extent, show that there is more to him than that. And I really thought they were going to do that here, especially with Chi-Lai and Lemo, since he had forged this relationship with them, that they would somehow be able to, bring out more in him, or at least able to contain him in a less violent way than his father did, to show that there is, a different way. But I felt like that was kind of lacking, because again, he just sort of stays in his Smash mode and nothing really gets through to him ever.
Yeah, I can see that. It's certainly far from perfect, but it's just, there's a lot going on there that's really, really good.
Oh, definitely.
And it's just really cool to see this character who had like kind of just been this one-off like thing that's more cool based on the aesthetic of that era of Dragon Ball. It was cool to see him kind of get explored and developed into a more round, fully fleshed out character. I mentioned I was going to tell this toy story. So when I was a kid, I had Dragon Ball Z toys, like a bunch of kids my age, and I had a Broly toy. Did not know it was Broly. Thought it was Trunks in the Super Saiyan False 2 or whatever that form's called. Then I saw the movie and I was so disappointed. It's always that weird thing of like, there's so many things because of the way Dragon Ball was released. Obviously with the subs first and then the dub and everything. There's so many things that like you could be spoiled on based on toys. Like I had a Vegito little like 2-inch figure before Vegito became a thing in the show.
Oh yeah, the toys were the worst in that. I mean, the worst and the best, depending on how you want to look at it in that regard. Because yeah, they had so many. Because even before they'd gotten past the Frieza arc, they had toys. They had imported toys over from everything. Like you could see. I remember I had an Android number 16, like a little figurine. I thought he was Raccoon or something, and they had Vegito and Gogeta. They had characters all the way to the end of the series, and you just and it was kind of part of the fun too, being on the internet, sort of primitive internet back then, and just trying to piece everything together and not really knowing how it fit. That was part of the mystique, and I love seeing things from the very beginning to the end. But I almost feel like you're kind of missing something out now, not having the mystery of what this bizarre, all these future Dragon Ball stories you can only dream of for years,
Yeah, it's a cool little thing. But yeah, so I had the Broly toy and no idea what it was. And oddly enough, I ended up before I'd even seen the movie, I decided it wasn't Future Trunks, or it wasn't Future Trunks in the Super Saiyan 2 form anymore. It was this ultra powerful Saiyan that had reformed Planet Vegeta. And then I saw the movie like, oh my god, this shitty little play thing I set up is actually the movie they went with. What the fuck? It was pretty sad. Anyway, yeah, so this is fun though. I really liked having this conversation. I think we did some stuff. Before we wrap up, though, there's just a couple things we usually cover with these, so it might be fun to do. Do you have a favorite design or appearance for Broly? Because he's had a couple different looks now.
I mean, I could just be really silly and say I love the Swamp Thing look, but I don't dislike any of them. I like with a lot of things in this movie, I do find it fascinating just how different a direction they took this new Broly in compared to the previous one. I mean, they really could have just kept the design exactly the same. So I guess I can say I like his newest one best. Sure, why not?
Okay, that's fair. I really do like the original design from the first movie quite a bit. And there is, as much as I'll complain about the second movie, like abandoning any chance to do anything with the character, and the third movie just running with that. I did like the fact that we got to see a not ultra powered up Broly for a bit longer. Like, you know, he's Super Saiyan, but he's not lost it yet. So that's just kind of a cool look where he's a little sleeker and it just looks a bit better. So I did quite like that little preview we got there for a while. And then, you know, the thing no one talks about is in the first movie when he's like kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. He's almost got like his own little Kaioken where he's obviously really powered up, but not Super Saiyan yet when he's fighting Goku.
Like the green look? Is that what you're talking about?
Is green or red or something. Like his hair kind of goes to a different color, but it's not Super Saiyan. It's the fight he has with Goku before like the big reveal happens and like he breaks through the control and all that stuff. It's a cool look in there. It's just it's a bit underrated, I guess.
I guess I do find it interesting now because I'm thinking about his earlier stuff now. Like when you see him at the very beginning of the first movie and he's just like that little small, you know, sort of helpless, meek-looking guy. And I do find that an interesting contrast to the new Broly, like just standard Broly look, where he's like, you know, looks like a, you know, a rough sort of caveman type character. So yeah, they really went in a different direction with this. So I find that contrast really interesting.
Yeah, I'm loving all the memes I'm seeing people do with the new Broly, though. They're really fun. Anyway, all right. We also usually go through recommendations, but I guess I'd just say watch the new movie and maybe watch the first movie. I don't think you're really missing much if you don't watch the middle two. Otherwise, yeah, that'll probably do it. Lance, thanks again for coming on. This was super fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am Mistare Fusion.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.